So the name of this, this class is Common Core 101 and Other Education Reforms. Because Common Core is like this much of really what the problem is, and there's so much more. But really, truly, is this the best we can do? Is this the best? So sometimes we get lazy and we just go along with whatever has been happening before, and we stop to think, what is our perfect education? What is our child's perfect education? And really think about it. We as parents know so much about our children and how they learn best. So I asked a few people what their perfect education was. I first started with Principal Staley. He's one of the best principals in Southern Utah. We're from St. George, and he's just an awesome guy. And he said, I can't learn unless there's dirt under my fingernails. He said if he had a perfect school, he would turn his old barn into a schoolhouse, and that he would have the kids spend time reading and doing math, in between running around with the animals and learning how to farm and learning how to be in there. He said, that's the way I learned on my farm, and that's the way I think children would learn best. And which I thought was beautiful. I mean, really, isn't that just lovely? I mean, that's not St. George, it's not that green, but pretend like there's red rocks behind him. That's basically what his barn looks like. My daughter, 14 years old, said, I learned by reading and then discussing. Just give me a book and a few friends. And her dream, beautiful thing is Belle's library in Beauty and the Beast, you know? And that's where she would learn best. Having all of her friends sitting on the couch after reading all the classics. She loves the classics, and discussing everything about it and what it means and everything. The neighbor down the street, he's, well, actually right across the street, he's 15 years old, and he has broken his arm twice this year and his leg twice this year. He really should hold still, but he said that moving makes his brain work, that he does not hold still and learn at all, which is very expensive for his mother and father, who have to take him to the hospital all the time to get his leg set, but whatever. And I have heard many say that I only learn when I feel loved, but my daughter is, she's 12 years old, and she simply cannot learn if she doesn't feel loved. And you know, we have these beautiful artists up here that capture learning moments where, you know, grandpa, dad, and mom are loving their children, and that's how they're loved, or that's how they learn. So sometimes, like our founding fathers, they didn't look to a king with lots of ruling experience to find out how to start the very best, wonderful government. They actually went to a higher source. So as parents, we can go to a higher source. We can look to those around us that we trust. We can listen to our intuition, and we can know what our children need and what is best. So how did the education system end up where it is now? And what is beautiful about this? And this is a pixelated picture, but what is beautiful about this compared to the other pictures that we just saw? So have you asked yourself these questions? And that's the biggest thing, is learning to ask yourself the questions, right? Like Brandon did. The first one is, who has stewardship over our children? So who has stewardship over our children? Parents, right? Ultimately, when the day is done, on our deathbed, we're caring about our child. You know, when the teacher, as loving and awesome and wonderful as the teacher is, when they're on their deathbed, they're not thinking about our children, they're thinking about their own, right? So why are parents expected to go on along with recent changes without an explanation? How many of you have had an email or something that said, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're about ready to change it, and this is why we feel it's good, and what do you think? Have we had that at all? I know I didn't. I get emails about pajama day, though, so I guess that's supposed to make up for it. And then it says, why are my children not excited to go to school anymore? you know, when my older children went to school, they were excited. I mean, it was fun. In fact, my oldest daughter, when she was in 5th grade, I remember one day where she was so excited she couldn't even sleep at night because she wanted to go to school the next day because her teacher was always coming up with these awesome, great, wonderful things. And there was one day that I went to pick her up, and she had a bandage over her shoulder, and it was all just covered in blood. And she had dirt on her face, and the biggest smile I have ever seen on a 5th grader ever. And she got in the car, and I'm like, "Are you okay? What happened?" And she just was laughing, and she said, "We reenacted the Battle of Gettysburg." And all of these, I look around, and all these other kids have the great big smiles, and they have, like, you know, bandages and everything, and she just had this biggest smile ever. But that's not, I haven't seen that in my children in several years. And maybe there are some schools out there and I haven't seen it. Why are parents left out of the education and discipline decisions that affect their child? I know in St. George they have what's called PLCs, which are planned learning communities. And they will have like all of the 3rd grade teachers or all of the high school language arts teachers get together and talk about the needs of their students. And they'll say, okay, Johnny has a problem learning times tables. What are we going to do to help him? Which is a great idea. And if you have all the teachers kind of working together to figure out the solution, that's great. It would be even better, though, if the parents were involved. Why are they having a hard time with their times tables? Well, Dad had a hard time with his times tables. This is what worked for him. But we don't get asked that. Or my friend Michelle, who will be presenting in the next hour, her son was having a hard time reading, so they were keeping him in during recess. And he'd come home every night and just so sad and so frustrated and so struggling. And finally she found out, you know, that he was not having any recess. So she went and talked to the teacher and said, "You can't do this anymore, you know, this is not going to work." And so they had to make the change. Wouldn't it have been wonderful if they would have come to her first, who knows that this boy has to move in order to think, and then all of that torture could have been just shaved off. Next is, why does the school system feel the need to spend money on a spin campaign for recent education changes? How many of you have heard on the radio how great Common Core is? Or how great on the TV or all these other advertising that's going out, and I don't know if they just get this advertising for free or money's being spent, but how many of you have heard that happen before Common Core? Have you ever heard a radio ad that said how great the new PE teacher was, or how the new whatever was? I have never heard that before, so that kind of questions me. Why do they feel like they have to promote this? And then, why are powerful lobbies allowed to have more say over education policies than teachers and parents? One of the major problems with education reform lately is that it's not a grassroots effort where parents are coming together saying, "Hey, we have a problem with math, let's fix the math system." It's lobbies that come in that have a lot of money, whether they own the curriculum, or they want to collect data, or they want to, Attendance Works is one of the lobbies that's lobbying for attendance laws, and it's coming from an national, sometimes international idea group and lobby group, and then they come and they make the changes. Attendance Works, for instance, they went to try to make the lobby changes through the legislature, and for the past 3 years they've been lobbying them and talking to them and getting in and schmoozing and everything, and this huge presence, and then they found out that wasn't working, so they went straight to the Utah Office of Education and said, "This is what we're going to do, and this is what you're going to do." They hand it to him. Utah Office of Education hands it to the rest of our state. And so some of our counties, like Davis County, has Attendance Awareness Month, and Attendance Works actually has a piece of paper that says, "This is what you tell parents, and this is how you say things and word things," and I mean, it's very detailed. So why is that happening? And the parents aren't able to have a voice, or it's not coming from the parents, is what I'm saying. And why do the Utah education leaders feel the need to rebrand national standards? And this is it lying. Utah Common Core 2 years ago, when I first asked my neighbor, who was a teacher, about it, she said, "Oh, it's not Common Core. It's Utah Core. It's Utah Core. It was totally different from Common Core." Well, a year after that, Superintendent Menlove came out and said, "No, it's just Common Core. We'll just call it Common Core, and it's just done." The same thing with all the standards, like the next generation science standards. Up until about 2 weeks ago, when they came down to St. George to tell us what was happening, they said that it was Utah science standards, that it had nothing to do. Well, we saw next generation science standards, which is a federal science standards, and we saw it right up next to our Utah science standards, and they were exactly, like, literally word for word. There was a few title pages that had been changed, but other than that, it was word for word the same. And they had just gone on with this all through the process until they were finally called on it on the radio, and they had to say that it was national or the next generation science standards. So why are they lying to us? Why are they trying to rebrand something if it's so good? Why can't they just call math, right? Let's see, why would any responsible educator allow the children to participate in an experimental test and curriculum? So this curriculum is all new stuff, and the tests are brand new stuff. The tests, the SAGE tests, are written by AR Corporation, which is a behavioral research company. They have nothing to do with education at all. They're a behavioral research company. And every test is an adaptive test. That means that this test that my child gets, she might answer a question one way, and her neighbor next to her might answer a different way, and they will be led to different questions after that and different questions after that. So it's adaptive, and everybody gets a different test, and teachers aren't allowed to see it, and moms and dads aren't allowed to see it, and we have no idea what's on it. And every time we ask to see it, they say, "Oh no, it will cost too much money, we can't let you see it," or they'll come up with some excuse. But really, it's in an experimental stage. We have no idea what kind of an effect these kind of tests will have. They're not like the old California achievement tests that we took when we were little. Remember, with filling in the bubbles, and you took it once every 4 years. They like to try to tell us that it is, but it's totally different because every child has a different test. And it's not necessarily goes along with what the curriculum is, which is a little frustrating. So if you ask some of the experts, like Gary Thompson, who is a child psychologist, a researcher, and he'll tell you that this is not good for the children. This is an unexperimented test, and we should not be doing this. We should not be using our children for this. And let's see, the next one is, why is an experimental testing and curriculum framework forced upon our whole nation? So not only is it an experiment in and of itself, but instead of just trying it with one little area and seeing how it goes, we're going to give it to everybody in our whole nation. Oh my goodness, that's a little bit presumptive of whoever decided that that was a good idea. Thought whoever wrote this thought he was God and was going to fix everything in the whole world. I'm not sure I'm happy with that, especially when it comes to things like science standards. Can you imagine everybody having the same science teacher, everybody seeing the world in the view of that particular science teacher? Can you imagine? Perspective is like one of the most important things we have. Perspective, seeing things through different perspectives, is an important way to have a different point of view on things and to learn a different way. When you were raised in a certain family, there's certain things that are wrong and right. And then a different family will have a different perspective, right? And it's those different perspectives that help us to learn and help us to grow and help us to see new things and discover new things. If we are all learning through the same perspective, the same lens, what does that mean to our future? What does it mean to our children? Let's see, why haven't I seen a marked improvement in my child's education? So if this is all so great and so wonderful, and that we're going to change the whole nation, why in the world aren't we seeing a huge improvement? Not only in test scores, but in the attitude and excitement of our child to learn. Why are good teachers and administrators not able to give full, truthful answers to my questions? I don't know about you, but the teachers in my schools are my friends. They're people that I, go to church with. They're in my neighborhood. They're people that I've known since I've helped their children, and yet when I go and ask them about these changes, I get this look like, don't ask me, just don't talk to me about this, And then I get, like, some of the administrators, they'll give the same, like, rote answers. My neighbor across the street opted her children out, and there were several on our street that opted their children out of the testing. And when she took it in to opt out, the principal told her, you are the only one that is opted out. And she, luckily Taryn, my neighbor, said, no, I know that I'm not the only one. And so, why did you tell me that I'm the only one? And they're not able to give full honest answers. I was on the radio this last week in southern Utah with the awesome Principal Staley that I talked about with the barn. and he's so nice and so great, and he wants to help the parents. But when I'd ask just simple, nice questions, he would literally have to change the subject because he couldn't answer it, and definitely not on the radio. And so he'd go on a nice, sweet story about how his kids are, experiencing this and this. But, when asked about the testing, he actually came out and said, the testing isn't good. We shouldn't be doing it. And then as soon as he said that, anyway, he had to backpedal a little bit and say, but everything else in this whole thing is really good, and you could tell that he really, truly had a hard time expressing what he truly believed, which is really sad. That makes me feel bad for him. All right, so education is a family affair. Sometimes we look at education as test scores. And so we compare ourselves to other countries around the world. How do our test scores compare? But we also have to look at how do the families that are dealing with these kind of education programs, how are they thriving? Now, I have been able to work a lot with children around the world. We have had foreign exchange students, and my daughter Dorothy has been the assistant for the exchange program down in St. George. And so we have had people from around the world in our homes, and they've become our best friends. And so we've kind of gotten to know them on a one-on-one basis and know what's really happening. So Chinese school days, we had a Chinese foreign exchange student living with us all year last year. She's adorable and cute. Anyway, her school days, for her, she was 15 at the time that she came, started at 7 in the morning, ended at 10 at night, had a 2-hour break for lunch, Monday through Saturday. And then she said she goes home and does homework. And she said, I'm not a very good student, so I only do homework until 1 in the morning. And I said, well, how long do the good students, do their homework for? And she said, they just stay up all night. And I said, when do you sleep? And she said, we sleep during school with our eyes open. And she could. I have seen that child standing up with her eyes open, totally asleep all the time. Huh, Dorothy? It was hilarious. It was very great talent that you have to get. And her family loves her. I mean, she has a mom and dad, and of course she has 2 sets of grandparents, and she's the only child in that family, right? And so they all look to her, and they just love her, and they want everything that's best for her. But in the end, they don't get a say in what she has to do with her education. If she wants to succeed in that country, they can never see her, they can never help her, and she has to stay up till 1 in the morning to do her homework or whatever. They can't make a decision. Our friend from Germany, she said that kindergarten begins at age 3. It's an all-day thing, and then they have a lot more freedom in how they can move forward and what kind of job that they want to get. And okay. Dorothy, can you come and fix this for me and bring that back up? We needed to practice. I needed to pray harder. Anyway, so in Germany, they have a really a lot more freedom than the Chinese do, but it's all based around the education from the time that they're 3 all the way until they're as much as 20 or 21 before they can actually go on to university. And you look at all of the families that are in Germany, and there are families that love their children. I mean, of course, everybody loves their children, but there's so many families that are falling apart, and so many families that just can't make it work, and they just have 1 or 2 children. then let's see, the third one was Japan. Dorothy's best friend 2 years ago was a Japanese foreign exchange student. And because she spent the year in America, she had to go back and do a lot more schoolwork. So Dorothy was so excited. She was like, we're going to be pen pals, we're going to Skype, we're going to do everything. This cute girl, her name is Kazumi, and she only had one chance to Skype Dorothy the whole year during her spring break. She literally did not have enough time with all of her schoolwork to Skype her very, very, very best friend. So we have, you can look around yourself. You probably know people from all around the world and look at their education system, but also look at their family life. How does it compare? And while we're doing this, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. Because I didn't know how to do this on a computer, so you get me on a piece of paper that I did during the band concert last night. So the Fibonacci circle, right? And so the Fibonacci circle right in the middle, if that is your child, and then the first ring around the child is the family. And then the second ring is the community, and then so on and so forth. You can go out from there, right? If the child needs help, then the family can be quick to respond, and they can tighten up that little circle, and they can just like contract and expand as needed. If the kid needs more space, it can expand. If the child needs help, it can contract. And so that the child is always taken care of and has the needs. And the same thing with the child as being a member of the family. If the mom is pregnant and about ready to have a baby, then the child can be closer to the mom, or the child can be expanded from the mom if the mom doesn't need so much. And the same thing even with the community. I know down in St. George, we have lots of floods, which is kind of funny because we're in a desert, but our neighborhood has been flooded like severely. In fact, during 2005, when all those homes went into the river, I don't know if you remember, 18 of them were in our ward boundaries, which is a lot. And there's times where the community has to just kind of spin together. We just have to be closer, and we have to spin together. Now, the problem is sometimes with the schools taking the lead is if they put themselves in between the family and, I didn't write one of these. Anyway, if they put themselves in between the family and the child, so if there's a child and then the first ring is are the schools. The schools are set. They cannot move. They cannot be flexible. They have to be totally set. So if the child is having a hard time, or if the family is having a hard time, or something is happening, the school cannot contract to help or expand to let go when the child is okay. And if the child is doing really, really well in school and wants to move forward, the school can't move. It has to just stay there. What our job is, really? Anyway, what our job is as parents is to break down that, put the school in its proper place. So we have the child in the center, then the family and the community, and then the school and everything else needs to be outside of that, so that when it needs to be expanded, look how pretty she is, or contract, then we're eager to do that. And I really wish that I remembered what came up next.
Oh, it's coming up.
It's coming up. So is our American education, public education, family friendly? So just this week in the news, just this week, Arnie Duncan said that if the states aren't going to keep control over everybody opting out, because some of the states, like in New York and in Oregon, have just opted tons and tons and tons of kids out, like a whole junior class. And he said that if the states can't get this in control, the federal government's going to have to take over and make sure the states get that under control.
Sorry, I just don't know this. My oldest is just in kindergarten. When you say opting out, there's opting out of taking the test or opting out of Common Core. What is that?
Opting out of taking the test. Okay. And in Utah, it's legal to opt out of the test. Some of the other states, it's not.
Okay.
And so it's literally, you just
fill out a form. And is the federal government trying to make it so that people cannot opt out of the test then, I guess?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, Arnie Duncan is not family friendly. In fact, he said that the center of every community needs to be the schools. And it's the family that's the fundamental unit of society, not the schools. And he wants elongated school days, and he wants healthcare centers in every single school. And so, like in Mississippi, Michelle, she has a friend that this summer she got this letter that said, guess what? We have a healthcare facility right here at our school. Your parents just need to sign this and we'll just take care of all of the well care visits, and anytime the child needs a visit, we'll just, if they're sick in school, we'll just take them out and we'll just take them to the healthcare center. And it was like a good idea for them. And you know, of course, Michelle's friend was like, oh my gosh, don't touch my child. I'll take care of him. I'll take him to the doctor. Anyway, the next one underneath is ABC News had a story about if having a family is an unfair advantage, because they said that if you were read to early as a child, that's an unfair advantage to the people that didn't have loving parents that read to you as a child. And there's a whole study that, you know, we're so naughty for reading to our kids. Bless our hearts. And so Idaho also adopted the right to school, and it's this before and after school thing that will be a tutoring program. And it's a private thing right now, but it has all the college kids coming to be tutors, and they said this is great. So your homework can be done, all the kids' homework can be done before they go home, and then all the family time, they can have family time. So your second grader, whose bedtime is at 8, they'll be done at 7, and you can have dinner with them and get them in the tub and put them to bed. And there's no time for reading, which is good, because ABC said that that's an unfair advantage anyway. Let's see, gender-neutral restrooms in Vermont? And here. Well, they're here. But in Vermont, they said that they're going to make them everywhere. And here we have them in a few of the schools and a few of the districts. And they said, the school district says that the feds are forcing a policy that allow transgender kids to use the bathroom of their choice and putting whatever bathroom in. Can you imagine, especially in elementary school, how, anyway, a little sickening to my stomach. So do any of these fit into your personal idea of a perfect education? I mean, your idea. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day what the schools say, what the government says, what Arnie Duncan says. What really matters is what the moms say and the dads say. What is their perfect education for their perfect children, right? So our high-stakes adaptive testing that is written by a behavioral research company that parents aren't allowed to view, is that part of your child's perfect education plan? No. Okay, at least not mine. Maybe it is yours, so I'm not going to speak for you. Then the standardized national curriculum without real parent input, we have the math. And the math, how many of you have done math with your kids lately? And there's like dots and slashes and things that are different. We had somebody come to us and say, you know, the parents need to stop complaining about this, and they just need to come and ask the teachers to teach them how to do it. And you know what? This might be the new best math program in the whole entire world, and if it is, that's great, but they should come to the parents first, right? If they knew it would be so different, if they really appreciated the parents and knowing that the parents would have to help their kids, they should have come to us first, right? And maybe they just didn't realize that they should have, which is sad, but maybe. Anyway, language arts. Do you know that the children, no matter their age, especially in high school, they're not reading whole volumes of literature, like whole books. They're reading sections out of different books. And and we talked with our language arts curriculum specialist over our district about this a few months ago, and she looked at me and I said, how can they really learn if they're not really getting into the classics and reading whole books? That makes sense to me. And she looked at me indignantly and said, well, how are they going to pass the test if all of their time is spent on one book? Anyway, I'm trying to get my breath back from that. It just kind of took me by shock. Science standards. This next generation science standards that we have are science appreciation. They're not hands-on. They're getting away from actually diving into science. They are passing things, a very myopic view of what science is. Science can be everything and anything. Go ahead.
Yeah, my daughter's a sophomore. She just took the state science test. And this year, she said the bulk of the questions were evolution and climate change. Or biology. She was in biology.
For biology.
Yeah.
And, you know, if that's something that you want to teach your kids, that's great. But, you know, my biology class, the greatest thing was dissecting that silly frog. I hated it, and all the girls squirmed, and ew, yuck, and all the boys are like, yeah, I want to do it. And I mean, but ultimately, you know, I'll never forget looking in that microscope and seeing something that I'd never seen before. And how, you know, why would we take away any experience that meant so much to us and replace it with something that doesn't mean as much to us, right? All right, and the arts, that's my baby, and I really, really have a hard time with the arts. The arts is about actively doing. I mean, whether it's painting or singing or playing the violin, it is about actively doing. There's something so organic about pulling a bow across the strings, and there's something that just vibrates in your soul that literally cannot be quantified on paper, and it cannot be, it can't be reproduced in any other way. And yet it's more of an art appreciation. So if you are going to be, when this is passed and when this is implemented, right now they're taking comments on it, it will not be being in band all day long, playing the instrument all day long, getting to know this instrument, getting to know music on a personal basis. It'll be a lot of things that are done where you can take a test, and they're arranging it so it can be on the computer and learning on a computer, which is so beyond ridiculous to me. But you know, I guess they think it's okay, but it's not okay for my kids.
Like, is it arts history, or is it? I don't understand how you learn art on a computer at all.
Well, and I think, you know, I thought, well, maybe it's the history, because that would be, you know, I like the history of all this. But it's, I wish I could remember the exact wording. They were asking to express your feelings on what you were seeing and what you were feeling, or what you wanted to feel when you did this. Which, you know, of course the arts are very much emotionally based, but how can you really connect with those emotions unless you're doing the art? You can't just talk about it. And the arts express stuff that cannot be quantified in words. They just can't. And yeah.
Well, if you're being tested on it, then you have to make sure you feel the right way.
Oh, yeah.
And this isn't yet, this is still something they're talking about?
They're talking about it.
Because that is one thing with our 6-year-old, is she does definitely do art. Like, she has a new thing that she makes every day. But yeah.
But she's still young enough that her art class is still very hands-on.
Yeah.
Very, you know, paint and all that, because she's still little. But as she gets older.
Well, and as they implement this, and they have a tendency to just implement it. They'll ask for public opinion, but that's, you know, with the plan of implementing it. Basically, if they're asking for public opinion, they've already decided what they want, and they're just covering bases. I mean, maybe not. Maybe they'll really take into consideration this time. Hopefully, we pray. And sexuality education. This is something that's really dear to my heart, because we're in St. George, and right across the border is Las Vegas. Las Vegas has sexuality education implemented into their schools already. And my cute friend, Emily Thornton, is this cute, adorable mom, and she was like 7 months pregnant, and she went to the school board last year to try to stop this. And she started noticing all these parents that she didn't bring, and she had brought a bunch of them with to, you know, to shout loud, and she's like, oh, this is exciting, and they start getting up and start talking about how great these sexuality standards are. So she Googles a few of the names, and they were all the Planned Parenthood people in the Las Vegas area. And so she said, when she got up to have a question, she said, and I would like to recognize that Planned Parenthood is here. And within like half of a second, with her big tummy, she had a Planned Parenthood person right in front of her, yelling and screaming at her, and which was a little threatening. There's this powerful thing in force. But sexuality education isn't sex ed. It is learning in kindergarten things that I wouldn't be able to even tell you, because I'm too modest. Things that kindergartners should never ever know about, and I don't care who you are, how liberal you are. Well, I guess there are people that really feel like that's a good thing, obviously, or else they wouldn't be doing it. But parents didn't have a say in whether this happened, and not only that, it's not one class, it's spread throughout all of the different classes. It's in your language arts, and your health, and your math, and your science.
As a parent, can you find these standards online somewhere?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you can find all the standards online. And where is the best place to find them?
Depends on which ones you're looking for.
Sexuality education is SYMPOSIUM. If you go to SYMPOSIUM, S-E-I or S-I-E-C-U? C-U-C-U-S.
And then the science standards are nextgenscience.org.
Okay.
For all the science standards. There's also CTE standards. It's just
Yeah, they have, that's right, I forgot about the CTE
not
standards.
just sitting and learning and no hands-on, so.
Can you imagine learning how to weld or do anyway, homemaking without making any bread? Anyway, that's how I learned homemaking, which is why I'm not very good. Teachers' evaluations are based on test scores. We touched on this at the beginning. Is your child's perfect education where your teacher has to have, it's just so terrible I can't even think about it. If the teacher has to go in and her evaluations are based on your child's test score, can you imagine the pressure that is put on the kids? You know, when my daughter comes home, you know, when she was in 4th grade, and she said, if I don't do well on this test, my teacher will get in trouble. And that's not, your children should never have that kind of pressure. I don't think they have enough pressure. Attendance policies, we talked about the attendance policies. If you can't say, hey, mom and dad have you know, grandma died, we're going to the funeral, and it's across the country, you know, you should be able to have the say in that. In fact, Utah just passed a law that said you'll need to give the school 1-day notice before taking your kids out. Anyway, I don't know how many
Didn't this just
people
happen?
know.
Didn't a family go on a family vacation and the school wouldn't excuse it because it wasn't?
Yeah, it seems like it happens a lot.
I just read
lately.
something about that.
Yeah.
But what happens if you don't? What do they do to you, I guess, is the question.
Well, and that's the thing is compulsory education laws, like in St. George for the high school that my daughter's at, their attendance policy comes up, and in the first 2 sentences, it talks about, you know, their attendance policies in accordance with the 5th District Juvenile Court, and, you know, so they can actually refer you back to the juvenile court system if your child is found truant. And now what they have done is, through attendance works, is they've lumped in truancies with excused absences. So, you know, if your child is truant all the time and home playing video games while mom's at work, that's something different than mom knows where you are, you're at a doctor's appointment, you're whatever, you know, whatever the mom thinks is a better opportunity for you. But if they're lumped in together, and then you get, for instance, I have a friend up in Tremont, Utah, because that's where I was from, and her daughter, what is it called? One of those tractors, the forklifts, ran over her foot, smashed her foot right before school started. Can you imagine this poor 14, 15-year-old girl? And so all of the different surgeries and the different rehabilitation, and she kept telling the schools, but she also got these letters all the time that said, you know, kind of, if you're not bringing your kid to school, then this is what needs to happen, and this is what needs to happen. And so she'd call and say, you don't realize where she is, and all the, you know, the lovely lady at the attendance office is like, yeah, we know that she's just had surgery, but we have to send home these things. And anyway, it's a big mess. Planned learning communities where teachers discuss the best education tactics with the child without consulting parents. We talked about that before, where the teachers get to decide without talking to the parents what's best for the kids, even though the parents know more. Bless their hearts. Turnaround schools, and we don't have all the time in the world to talk about turnaround schools, but that was passed in the midnight hour of this last legislative session. Basically, if the school doesn't meet certain test scores, then the State Office of Education can come in and decide that they are low-performing schools, and they can fire the principal and the vice principal and half of the teachers and turn them around. Now, in the process of turning them around, they can put a healthcare center in as part of the turnaround school. And they figured, well, if they are low-performing schools and they are having a hard time in their area, then they must need healthcare centers. So in St. George, we have 2 schools that have healthcare centers there. How many of you guys know of a school that has a healthcare center? There's some in Salt Lake, I know, and ask around, because there's probably a lot more. We didn't know there were any in St. George until we actually looked it up. And on the healthcare centers, FERPA law trumps HIPAA law. So FERPA law is the Family Privacy Act within education, which is very watered down and very non-existent. And the HIPAA laws, of course, you know that is the medical records law, where they can't share. So FERPA laws now trump the HIPAA laws within that healthcare center on the campus. And also the parents or the kids might be able to go, like the 14-year-old girl can go and see the doctor, and the mom will never even know, doesn't ever have to know. So what can we do about it? We don't need to be scared, we don't need to worry, because we're the parents, we're in charge, we can make it all happen, right? We are trying to fix a broken system, and we call out all the problems that we see, but when are we going to, first of all, stop and ask, what kind of education works best for our kids, right? We don't need to have somebody else tell us what best education is for our kids. We have that ability through the fact that we gave birth to them. Imagine the power that parents could give our children if we just stopped to consider what a perfect education scenario would be for our children and then move ahead to make it happen. Really, truly, we can make anything happen. And I tell you for a fact, because I'm an idiot parent that took a long time to realize this, and when I finally pulled my kids out this year, at the beginning of the school year, I had no idea. I thought, okay, homeschool is doing school, public school at home. And what I have found and what I've been led to, and as I have cried about it and been frustrated with it and worked with my children and stuff, is that right when I needed it, people would come to my door and say, this is the curriculum you need, or hey, we have this group of parents that are working together, or this is what's happening. And my child, my 14-year-old that I pulled out just this year, I thought she would what 14-year-old doesn't want to be around her friends? She has more friends now. She has more of a love of learning. She's always been top of her class. And miracles have happened. Miracles have happened and opportunities have opened up to her that I didn't provide, they were just opened up to her. And because we had the time and the freedom to do it. And she'll actually be going to Washington, D.C. in July, which for a whole week to actually be on the Capitol with the legislators from Utah. I think that's so exciting. And that's not something I knew how to do. Imagine, this is our warning to do better, guys. This is our warning. We must elevate the role of mother and father as the primary educators in the lives of our children. We can do it, especially the people in this room, we can do it. It takes faith, and we may stumble, but really, even at the worst that we could do is so much better than turning our children over to somebody that doesn't love them like we do. And then next we need to see, look forward. Imagine in about 10 years, you're going to see, in about 10 years, you're going to see all of these homes all over Utah, all over the nation, that have these perfect education opportunities for their children. They'll be perfect homes like Carolina's, like some of these, the pictures that we saw at the beginning, which I'll flip back to. And then we'll start to see the peace that our children, and it will be so great. We'll be wondering why in the world it took us so long to get to this point. And I want to go back to this, let's see, this picture. For those of you that missed it, there's better ways to do it. I asked a few of the people that I know what their ideal education is, and Principal Staley said that he can't learn unless his fingernails are stirred under his fingernails. He said that he would like to take his old barn and turn it into a school and have them learn math and science and everything, but actually go and be in the community. And my daughter said that she wants to learn how to read great, wonderful books and then discuss them with her children or discuss them with her friends. And a neighbor across the street says that moving makes his brain work. But most of all, every child cannot learn unless they feel loved. So let's go and let's look at this with a great opportunity. This is a warning to parents throughout the whole entire country that we can do so much better in elevating the role of mother and father to the primary educators in lives of their children. Make sure that our children do not go 1 minute without feeling loved and adored, without knowing that they can reach their own unique potential. We can do it. We can work together and make it happen. And any questions?
Sorry, I just wanted to comment on, she said, what can they do if your child is has absences when you want to take them out? And I was the office manager of an elementary school for years. And so this just brought this to, so I went and looked up their policy on it. Well, the board for the school can actually decide what's an excused absence and what's an unexcused absence. So for this particular school, they say you cannot have your child out of school a day before a holiday want to extend our Christmas vacation a little bit, those are going to be unexcused absences. And then they quote the law. The notice of compulsory education violation will include require them to blah, blah, blah. Anyway, if you have 5 or more unexcused absences, then they will send you a notice of compulsory education violation. And then, if you have a certain amount, then you will be, one second, then the parent's violation will be reported to the county attorney for referral to juvenile court.
And that's the elementary school.
This is elementary school. It's 12 years and above, so some elementary schools don't go to, you know, I mean, if you have like a K for 8, they'll cover the 12 years and above, they're required for that compulsory education. And you wonder what they can do. Just last week, they went to a home, I can't remember what state it was in. This was a family with 10 children that they were homeschooling, that were learning well. They came and took the children out of that home, took the children away from their parents. That's what they can do.
Do we have any other questions and comments?
You're welcome.
Well, I hope that you understand that parents can look around and ask themselves questions. If it doesn't feel right, run the other way. We would never send our child into a home where we didn't know who was there and what they had there and what their value system was, or what their, you know, we would never do that. If there was a new neighbor in the neighborhood, we would go and scope them out and make sure they're okay before we let our child go and have a slumber party there, right? The same thing goes with our schools. We can be very aware of knowing what's happening, and if we don't like what we see, we can choose a better path.
I love that you say that, and I think it's so empowering. And don't ever feel alone. We've always homeschooled from the very beginning, but I think more and more as parents are becoming aware and informed on these issues, more people are doing it, and there are some awesome communities out there. We're part of like a humanities cooperative, and it's incredible, and the women there are just, you know, the more we get together, the more amazing activities and lessons we plan, and our kids are just thriving and loving it. And I think there's even talk about renovating, you know, a space where we could have like a homeschool school, so we can gather, leave all of our supplies there and meet. And so anyway, all of these awesome ideas are coming up because of the challenges that we're seeing. So we just need to turn those hard things into positives and reform education.
And imagine, really in 10 years, I see a bunch of beautiful, lovely, good report, praiseworthy schools all over the place, where these children are able to learn the way they learn and thrive the way they thrive, where experts can come in and teach their children. It doesn't necessarily need to be the parent. You can have, you know, Mr. Newmeyer come in and teach science, and, you know, for a couple of days, and amazing, beautiful things will happen, and they will happen because parents will not put up with that any longer. Oh yeah.
What's the transition from homeschool to college?
You know what? Homeschool to college, I was worried about. And all of the homeschool kids, though, that I have just started to get to know, they are either, like I have, they're either in college by the time they're 15, 16, and they're actually, you know, finished within a few years after that, because community colleges, basically, you can just start there and then transfer anywhere else you want. And others have decided that their style of learning is so much more effective in learning that they have gone on to do great and wonderful things outside of the college system, just because they have found their way of learning for them works so much better. So, I mean, really it's a big scary thing, but in most community colleges, you don't even need to have a high school diploma.
There's a great book called The Brainy Bunch, and you might want to look into that. All of her kids have excelled, I mean, have graduated at, you know, like 17 and whatnot, even earlier, and are professionals. And so it's a mom that kind of shares her insights on how that works. However, Common Core is leaking into and making it difficult for that to happen, which is something we all need to, you know, stand up against, because
and how wonderful. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We're not there to get a degree, we're there to get an education. So go where the education is, not where the degree is. Yeah, did you?
Yeah, just a personal experience on that issue about going from homeschool to college. We homeschooled our family. Some of it was in public school, some of it was not. But in the instance of my son, he's now at BYU, didn't get a college diploma, but he's on a full ride scholarship, academic scholarship, and you know, it wasn't an issue for him in that case. But I'll tell you one thing that will help is if you get your kids involved in activities outside of the home, if they're involved in various civic activities and things like that, that helps give them something to look at besides what the parent says.
And when you're homeschooling it, you have a lot of time to do that and look for things that aren't, yeah. And that's what amazed me the most, is how much more. Anyway, thank you so much, and we will get ready for our next group. Thank you so much.